Hi, this is Alan Gassman, and I am here with Dana Dalal, Rachel Daggett, and Peter Farrell, and we're going to talk about what advisors and business and homeowners need to know about what to do with this mess from an economic standpoint. There's a lot of information here. The slides are voluminous. We're just getting our arms around all this, so you can't rely on anything in particular we say other than to at least use this slide deck and other information you can find as guidance to help your clients and others. So we're going to resend this slide deck and a recording of this webinar in a couple of hours. It's going to be the same slide deck unless we find any typos. I can't imagine finding typos. Then we're also going to post it to our YouTube channel so you can watch it as many times as you like. We've got some biographies here for you. And Peter Farrell just joined our firm, and his main accolade is that he's here on Saturday. As they say, 98% of success is showing up. And I want to thank Dana and Rachel also for showing up today and helping us with our materials. The table of contents is going to be added. We had another webinar recently, in fact, Thursday or Friday with James Constable and his partner, Allison Friedman. We'll also send you the link to that video. That's all about what to do to protect yourself with respect to insurance companies. And Dana, do you have a story to tell us?
I do. Given Florida's sensitivity to all these disasters, there have been quite a few court cases where juries have awarded plaintiffs who were denied insurance claims damages. So this is a pretty big one. The jury verdict was for 9.2 million for the plaintiffs, and this was out of Hurricane Irma. So initially, the insurance claim was denied for 1.2 million, but because of the time lapse where the insurance denied the claim and the time it got to court, the damages kept on getting worse for the assisted living facility. So because their roof was bad, there was exposure to the walls, and this snowballed into a really big damages case, which the plaintiffs did win.
So you're going to see, insurance companies are no smarter or dumber than other bureaucratic companies. And the nature of the beast, of course, is the insurance company wants to pay reasonable claims, but the lower they pay, the better. So here they could have settled this for $1.2 million. That was the claim that the the business owner made. And they obviously didn't settle it for the $1.2 million. And I guess they thought they were going to have to pay less than $1.2 million. And just know that juries regularly award very nice settlements to individuals and businesses when insurance companies don't pay, because jurors know, jurors are paying these insurance rates, and most jurors have had an experience or a family member with an experience. So don't just accept what the insurance company offers. Make sure that you're getting the right arrangement from them, and don't hesitate to go for help in doing that, but go to somebody who's going to help you and not hurt you. So there's a lot of slides here on that, and I think the other video that we just prepared with James and Alyssa is very instructive on this, so I won't go into more detail. And yes, Dennis, the slide deck will be available, and you should be seeing it right now. So now let's talk about a brief overview of some of these things that will help you besides your insurance. One is the FEMA program, and FEMA is the federal agency that deals with disasters. And for Hurricane Helene damages, you only have until October 28th, which is the week after next, to go to that FEMA website and file your claim. And you only have until November 11 for Hurricane Milton. Now, Rachel's going to talk about what FEMA may do, and it's kind of vague sometimes as to what FEMA may do, but at the bottom of the page here, I see individual assistance of up to $42,500, even for wealthy people. Wealthy people and people who aren't so wealthy may have a FEMA check coming. My partner, Brandon Ketchrin, got a $750 FEMA check, and he's not even sure how they found, a $750 FEMA deposit to his checking account, and he doesn't even know how FEMA figured out what his checking account was. So if any of you accidentally sent $750 somewhere and it didn't get to the right place, maybe Brandon's the one who got it. Also, I was pleased to get an announcement yesterday from the Clearwater Bar Association about something other than my dues. And what it is Monday, October 28th. So that's the day after tomorrow through Thursday, October 31st, FEMA will be located in the Coachman Park on Drew Street in Clearwater. And from 10 to 3, you can go there and get some help. So I don't know if they're going to have a petting zoo also or anything like that, but it's nice to know that the federal agency is coming out to help people. And especially in an election year with an election coming right up, you can expect they're going to do whatever they can for citizens, no matter which political party they're in. So then the important SBA deadlines. The SBA, just like during the PPP crisis, or just like during the COVID crisis, the SBA has a emergency loan type of arrangement. And for businesses, it'll be no more than 4%. For people, it will be less, and it might be no payments for the first year, and then interest only for another 29 years, and then a balloon. So we'll be talking more about that, but there are deadlines, November 24th and December 4th, to apply for these, what are called EIDL loans, which we'll talk more about. The other thing that is a deadline is you could actually get a property tax increase because your 2024 property taxes are based upon what your property was expected to be worth in 2024. Well, now, 3/4 of the way through 2024, your house is worth a lot less, and they're willing to prorate that. So that's a pretty neat thing, and there will be a due date for that on May 16, the due date on that will be March 1st of next year, that you'll have to apply for this refund of your property taxes. And then your corporate tax and your franchise tax, if you have to file these with Florida, anything that was due from August 1st through May 16th of 2025 will be due May 16, 2025. So, I'm sorry, anything due from August 1st, 2024 and before May 16, 2025, you can wait. And all you have to do is go to your accountant's office on May 15, 2025 with a grocery bag full of receipts and information. And then your CPA will meet you at the door and thank you profusely and get that prepared by May 16th. I'm just joking, of course. So then your sales tax reports, you don't have to do a sales tax report until November 22nd, 2024. So that gives you a little bit of help there. And then, Rachel, do you want to talk about what a qualified disaster is, or do you want me to cover that?
If you would like to, I know Dana worked a little bit on this, so if she wanted to cover it as well.
Dana, what is a qualified disaster besides my desk?
So apart from Alan's desk, a qualified disaster could be a different number of things. So as you see, there's a list through 1 through 4. For our purposes, it's going to look like either Section 2 or Section 4 under this statute. So a federally declared disaster has a definition that we'll later discuss over here, which would be being announced by the president to warrant assistance by going through the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. And then the other potential thing would be under that 4th section being part of the general welfare that the government is warring assistance to. So that can be through your federal, state, or local government. And that section is actually what helps us bring FEMA to those eligible in Florida. So,
all right. So on this map on page 32, if you're a Helena victim, you see the counties that you can apply for aid there. And then there's different categories, but we are in Pinellas, and most of our clients and friends are in Citrus, Hernando, Pasco, Hillsborough, and Pinellas, and Manatee and Sarasota. So they're all qualified for all these different forms. So then for Hurricane Milton, you've got a lot more counties, don't you? It just washed through. It did less damage, but certainly a lot of your friends all over the state of Florida are eligible for this information. So Rachel, do you want to cover FEMA for a while?
Yes, I can cover FEMA. So after your disaster, FEMA will provide funds for up to $42,500 per individual for different topics such as temporary housing, if your house is inhabitable, cost of repairs or replacements for driveways, roads, or bridges, temporary housing units, if rental assistance is unavailable due to a lack of housing after the hurricane, and then hazard mitigation assistance to rebuild and prepare your structures to be more durable for the next storm.
Okay, so I think the word inhabitable there should have been uninhabitable, probably. Okay, so then I see what it gives you. They'll pay for these things to get you food, water, get you a car, get somebody who got killed during the hurricane buried, help with your child care, help with medical and dental, help with moving and storage. That's all pretty good. That's up to 42,500.
Yes.
Okay, and then what do you have to do to qualify for this besides have the
There's
damages and be I think you have to be in an uninhabitable home situation, it sounds like.
Yes, and besides all of that, there's about 5 basic conditions that you have to meet before receiving the funds. So being an American citizen, having proof of identity, showing that you have ownership of the home that was impacted by the damages, and then that insurance is not meeting your needs and they are not providing funds. And you can still apply for FEMA benefits if you do have insurance. However, you need to file a claim with the insurance and then show proof of a denial letter, or that they were able to fund something else.
So it sounds like, let's say that we have a $50,000 deductible on our insurance policy. FEMA may actually require us to make a claim if we have 40,000 worth of damages and get it denied by the carrier to prove that we're not eligible because of the high deductible. It may be that silly. So, Rachel, would you mind seeing if you can call FEMA Monday and see if it's my deductible and I'm clearly not going to get it, do I still need confirmation from the insurance carrier? Because I'll bet a bunch of people will get hung up on that. So anything else you want to add about FEMA, Rachel?
That they do not assist with small business disasters, and that's what the Small Business Administration is administering loans for.
Okay. The other thing I want to mention that I don't think we have a slide for, but we should add it, is that I think it's a FEMA law that says that if your house is grandfathered as to its elevation and applicable federal requirements to build a new house on the water, then if your repairs are more than 50% of the pre-storm value of the house, you can't just fix your house. You've got to go ahead and elevate it and meet all the other criteria. So I'll give you a mathematical example. You have a 2,500 square foot house on the water. It was perfectly fine when it was put in 1970. But now it would have to be 5 feet higher. So a 2,500 square foot house might be worth $250,000, $100 a foot. It's kind of an old house on the water. So the repairs may be 200,000. So now, by law, the person cannot repair that house and live in it. They could find a way to repair only 125,000 and live there, or they've got to spend now maybe $500,000, maybe $600,000, maybe $1 million to build a new structure 5 feet in the air. They can't afford to do that. So they end up having to leave and go live somewhere else. So, and the state and county rules are very similar. So people need to make plans. And yes, there are people living in their cars right now who haven't gotten the help they need. But this is a really nice checklist of what you need to do. And again, the deadlines and all that. So step one is go to the website, make your application, print out a copy or take a picture of a copy of it with your phone in case the federal government's computer doesn't work. Then there's going to be an inspection. The inspector needs to show you their badge and should not be talking to you about certain things. They're just there to do the inspection. Is that right, Rachel?
Yes.
Okay, then you'll get FEMA's decision, hopefully sooner rather than later. And then finally, when you return home, I don't think that FEMA pays your moving expenses to return home, right?
No, they will not pay moving expenses.
Right. So this is a dog of a slide. All right. So now I want to talk. And by the way, if anyone has questions, yes, you can share these slides with your clients. Judith, thanks for asking. If you have questions, you go to the inverted pyramid thing under your audience viewing and just type out the question. And if I know the answer, I'll answer it. And if I don't know the answer, I'll pretend not to see it. So now we go to the SBA. Now, Brandon Ketchrin did a really good talk on the SBA. He recorded it for me, but he forgot to hit share screen, so it didn't have the slides. So I didn't prepare to show it to you. I tape recorded it on a tape recorder to tape record it to play it back, but it came out real grainy. So we will send Brandon's talk, but the SBA may be very, very generous here. So up to $500,000 per loan for damaged real estate, up to $100,000 for personal property, that's cars and your furniture and stuff like that. It is a loan. It's not what FEMA gives as a grant where you don't have to repay it. You do have to repay it, but the interest rate is under 4%, as we'll discuss. And the payment may be no payments the first year and then interest only for 29 years with a 30-year balloon. So that may be of great help. And then for business owners, up to $2 million. So, and that's aggregate for all of the business owners' businesses. And then not-for-profit organizations may get a loan for up to $2 million. The interest rates are as low as 2.813% for homeowners and renters, 3.25% for not-for-profits, and 4% for businesses. And then it says right here, terms for all of these loans are up to 30 years with no prepayment penalties or fees. And but we're going to talk, there's a lot of restrictions on these loans. And when you're dealing with the Small Business Administration, you are not dealing with a friendly situation if you don't follow their rules. So during the PPP loan days, a lot of people took these big loans and then they used the money for personal purposes, and that's a felony. So, and if you can't repay the SBA, they have certain rights in bankruptcy court that other creditors don't have. So if you're going to borrow money from the SBA, carefully consider the repercussions. It could even disqualify your IRA, because if the SBA requires a lien on a UCC1 lien, a blanket UCC1 lien that would cover an IRA, then under the IRA rules, that disqualifies the IRA. So we have to be careful. Now, you have to prove you can't get credit elsewhere at an interest rate up to 8%. So if I am able to get another loan at 12%, then I may be able to qualify for this SBA loan. But if I'm able to get a loan, and I'm sure I have to show them an application and a rejection, then I may get this SBA loan, which is quite a wonderful gift in the scheme of things. Now, they are out of money, or FEMA's out of money, but there will be an act of Congress and the president whenever Congress comes back, and they'll be authorizing a lot of money. For example, for Hurricane Helene, there's already 37,000 applications, 700 loan offers totaling 48 million. So average 68,000 per loan. For Milton, there's over 12,000 applications, and we don't know about the loan offers yet. So there's a map of Pinellas County. I'm not sure why it's there, but it looks pretty nice, doesn't it? All right. Oh, because we're going to talk about some Pinellas County rules. Now, I'm sure the other counties have rules, and they're probably very similar. But if you have a substantially damaged property, then the rule, the 50% rule I was talking about, applies. And these new rules are all electrical and mechanical equipment has to be above the 100-year flood elevation. Now, Dana and Rachel, could you tell us Monday when you come in, do some research, and did we hit the 100-year mark? See, the 100-year flood mark is the highest that water has been in the last 100 years. And because of the environmental issues or the environmental condition, what we experience this year may not only happen every 100 years, it may happen every 2 to 3 years. So under the flood level, you can only have parking and limited storage. So I've talked to one of my clients about building a loft in his garage because he wasn't able to save his personal belongings. You know, he didn't have any, like a little elevator to a loft where he could put his mower, his edger, his woodworking machines and stuff like that to save them. So I talked about the substantial improvement rule, which is going to be a huge challenge, especially with what it costs nowadays to do anything relating to construction. And then, without going through it, but to arm you with information, the EIDL business loans, what they can be used for, what they can't be used for. Going back to when Brandon and I were doing our webinars on PPP in 2020. So on the left, you have the EIL loan rules from the 2011 regulations, which I don't believe it's changed. Dana and Rachel will let us know Monday if they have. And on the right, we have the PPP rules, which are no longer relevant as of today. And then we talk more about, there's a Forbes article I wrote about how borrowers are going to get hurt if they do the wrong things with an EIDL SBA loan. So then on page 98, I've got the information for you on refunding property taxes. I've spoken with someone at the property tax appraiser, and yeah, values are coming down on the beaches. I mean, that's not official, but people who love living on the beach love it less now. And a number of people, friends and clients have said, nope, I'm moving inland. I don't want to go through that again. Especially clients who were sitting on their kitchen counters and then standing on their kitchen counters, unable to save their personal stuff, sticking it out in this hurricane. It was not pleasant. The neighbor in a wheelchair who drowned because he couldn't get up high enough to breathe, not pleasant stuff. So it's serious. As far as taking pictures of things, If you took 15 pictures, take another 1,500. Take a bunch of pictures, take a lot of video, and email it to yourself and make sure you received it. So if it gets lost from your phone or somewhere in the iCloud, you'll still be able to find it. You're going to need that to prove up your claims. And if your house is fine now, it came out fine, take a bunch of pictures, take a bunch of videos, because now if we get another hurricane, they're going to say, hey, this came from one of those 2 hurricanes in October. This didn't come from the rainstorm in January. You should have filed a claim in October. Well, no, I have this beautiful video of my house showing that I had no damage. It wasn't like I forgot to file a claim. Now, how do you get a beautiful video of your roof? You call Dana and Rachel, they'll come over with a ladder, they'll go up on your roof, they'll take pictures of everything, then they'll come back down the ladder, then they'll train your dog and teach good table manners to your children and your spouse. All right, so Pinellas County has a lot of really good information on your decision as to what to do and how you can. Now you've got the homestead exemption cap, right? So Marcia and I paid $440,000 for our house in the 1990s before Dana and Rachel were born, probably. And now the house is appraised at about $1 million. So if we sell that house and buy a new house, we're going to be able to port our property tax differential, but only to the extent of $500,000. So if we paid $440,000 and it's now worth $1 million, and the tax assessor value is say $460,000, then I'd want to be able to port $540,000 to my new home, but they only allow $500,000. But if you're porting it because of the hurricane, then they may allow you to port the whole thing. So that's just another consideration, something to look into. And then on page 104, we've got a time chart that shows you that the nature of paying taxes in advance. So in November of 2024, I'm going to pay my tax bill for 2025 because I get a nice discount. But then in 2025, if there's a terrible storm that decreases the value of my property by half in the middle of 2025, then they'll give me a discount, and it'll be for approximately 25% of the property taxes. So it's going to be a very busy day for property appraisers, or a busy year for property appraisers. Here on page 105 is the application. So I'll skip over that. There's just a lot of information here. And now I'm going to turn this over to Peter. Peter has about 45 minutes of information and 32 minutes to present it.
All right. This document that you're seeing on your screen is an IRS publication. It's available if you just search for disaster relief providing assistance through charitable organizations. And it goes through a lot of the tax rules related to charitable organizations and in the event of a hurricane and so on. The first thing they point out is a lot of people get excited when there's a disaster and want to start up their own charity. Often it might be better to work through an existing charity. They give that advice. If you go to the next slide here, 113, one of the things that they talk about is that an existing charity, even if in its purpose is not to provide disaster relief, it's free to do that. That is a charitable activity, and you can just report that on your return for the next year. Now, under the next slide.
Yeah, let me just mention the Pinellas County Community Foundation is a really good organization, and they are a 501c3 charity. So Marcia and I donated a certain amount to them, and we got our tax deduction, and the money went into an account, and that account is kept separately. It's identified as having been donated by us, and then we can call them and say, hey, somebody needs this, and we think that this is a charitable thing. Would you consider it? So that's one way that you can do this. Another way is Marcia and I run the Sarah Gassman Foundation, which teaches piano lessons to needy children. Well, now a friend of mine who wants to help someone they don't know, can't be a friend, but they want to help someone they don't know who's in need, they could donate the money to the Sarah Gassman Foundation, and we could go ahead and use that. And I didn't even realize that, Peter. So,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
a
the
great
second thing,
example.
you may have given money to your Fidelity, Schwab, or other donor advised fund, and then they can cut checks to organizations in Pinellas County or wherever you want to help. So go ahead, Peter. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, that was a great example. All right, and then on slide, we can move on to the next slide. We talked about that. So we go to slide 115. Now, one really important thing that Alan just touched on a little bit is that a donor cannot earmark funds for a particular individual or family. So if your neighbor was impacted by the hurricane, you can't go to the Sarah Gassman Foundation or the Red Cross or Salvation Army and say, hey, I'm going to give you $10,000. I want you to help my neighbor. It cannot be for a particular person or family. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And there may also be also state law considerations on that point as well. They note here that if you have a situation, for example, if you might be able to get a grant to help hurricane disaster victims, and you need to get it in the next 30 days, get your designation as a tax exempt 501c3 by the IRS, you can request that be expedited if you are starting your own organization, but there has to be a reason why you need it expedited. Let me give a couple examples on slide 117. If we go to slide 118, here are some of the types of things that a charitable organization can do. They're the things you might think of: food or shelter, helping to provide long or short-term housing, childcare, so on. Even something you might think of like childcare could be a charitable purpose for a federal tax-exempt organization. You could also, if you go to slide 119, something you might not think about is also providing aid to businesses. Now, the impact to any particular business has to be incidental. And they give an example here that there might be a business district that was affected by a tornado, and it affected the sidewalks and the roads, and no individual business wants to reinvest unless they know that the other businesses are going to be fixed up. And that could be a charitable purpose, would be to provide assistance to fix up those businesses, as long as you're giving it to an entire area, not focusing on one particular business.
Okay, I think I want to leave enough time, Peter, for your casualty losses. So anything else you want to say about the charitable?
Sure. Yeah, maybe just this next slide about charitable class is important, especially if you're a employer giving things to your employee. It has to be an indeterminable number of people you're benefiting. And so if you're going to give, for example, benefits to your employees under some of the further rules, and you want to help your employees, it can't just be for one particular hurricane, it has to be for all hurricanes or a number of people who you can't identify all the list of people at the day you make the rule. That's important. Let me see if there's any. We already talked a little bit on slide 125 about what a qualified disaster is, examples of qualified disaster relief payments. And of course, the benefit of those is they are non-includable in the income of the recipient, and often are deductible.
We're going to get to 139. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Very good. What Marcia and I did was we bought gift cards and gave them to a guidance counselor at a low-income school, because we asked the school how can we help families, make sure kids have food on the table and all that stuff. And they said, well, you could just donate gift card. If you donate money to us, we'll buy gift cards and give the kids' parents gift cards. So that's one of the things that we decided to do. Okay, and then there's all sorts of slides from Carl Mill on this, and then I'll also, if you want, if you email me, I'll give you a link where you can watch Carl Mills's presentation. So, because some people will set up charities just for the hurricane, because it's just time. It's time to do this for charity. If you want your name on it, you want to have a family foundation, you want your kids to go do something useful, this could be a good time to set up a 501c3 charity. So, Peter, is it true that if I have an employee who suffered losses, that I could give that employee a check and I could get a tax deduction for giving that employee the money, but the employee does not have to include it in income, and there's no employment taxes, unemployment tax, workers' comp tax, and I don't have to consider that compensation under the 401k? Is that remotely possible?
It's remote. Sounds too good to be true, but it is remotely possible if it meets the requirements for direct relief payments under 139, but section 139.
So that's Internal Revenue Code section 139?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so should we go to there's the tax provision. You want to walk us through it? Page 157.
Sure, yep. So typically, gross income is from any source of income from whatever source derived, unless there's an exclusion in the code. And we have one here under 139A. So gross income will not include any amount received by an individual as a qualified disaster relief payment. And then that's defined in B. It's any amount paid to or for the benefit of an individual. You see there's 4 items listed there. Reimburse or pay reasonable, necessary, personal, family, living, funeral expenses as a result of a qualified disaster. That's important, and that's defined under subsection C. Any reasonable, necessary expenses for repair or rehabilitation of your personal residence or of its contents, again, as a result of a qualified disaster. It's by a person engaged in the furnishing or sale of transportation as a common carrier, by reason of the death or personal physical injuries incurred, again, as a result of a qualified disaster, or amounts that are paid by a government, federal, state, or local government or agency.
So I think that means that I can ask my employees to give me their receipts for spending 7 hours on I-4 getting to Orlando, and then their hotel bill and other expenses they incurred, and then I can reimburse them for that amount and get a tax deduction, and they don't include it in income. And I could informally decide that I'll reduce their bonus. I could say, look, this is just part, for Christmas, you would typically get $5,000. If you've got 1,250 of receipts, I'll give you 1,250 today, not taxable, and then I'll bonus you 3,750 in December. Does that sound like it'll fly, Peter?
It might be better not to say that, because I think there is I think there are some rules about it can't replace your compensation that you would have received otherwise.
Okay.
But maybe just don't say that. Keep that to yourself.
The don't say that rule. Okay, so then the next question I have is, if I own an S corporation, if I own more than 2% of that S corporation, individually or I think with my spouse, then the fringe benefits that S corporation gives me, while they're deductible by the company, maybe they're not deductible by the company, or I have to pay tax on them, one or the other. Does a 139 benefit work the same way as a medical insurance benefit and all, those fringe benefits, or is it not clear?
It's not clear to me at this moment. This is a question I'm gonna look again into. This is a Monday question, but I did look at the statute, and 139 is not listed there, but I do want to do a little more research before I make a definitive statement on that.
Well, for law students, it's a Monday question, but you're a lawyer, so if you want,
Saturday question.
it could be a Saturday afternoon question.
It should be.
Several of the attendees have sent me emails asking that exact question. He joked. Okay. So now, Peter, you got 20 minutes to talk about casualty loss deductions. And is there anything we want to cover before casualty loss? Because you may go over. I don't know if you can do casualty losses in 20 minutes, but is there anything else that any of us want to say, Dana, Rachel, Peter, that I haven't mentioned that I should have mentioned before we go to casualty losses?
I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay, I stumped the panel. All right, Peter, it's all yours. I'll just interrupt you a few times.
Okay, feel free. So we have casualty loss rule on the slide 158. Now, first thing to kind of note, I guess we can go to the slide 160. Is that any personal casualty loss deduction is not allowable from 2018 to 2025, but there is an exception if it's attributable to a federally declared disaster. So that's good news for our discussion today. But if it's casualty loss occurring in a trade, business, or for income producing property, it still is allowable. I think maybe the best way to talk about this is through a couple examples. So if we go to slide 162, 163.
And what we're talking about here is an income tax deduction for the loss. So for example, if my income this year is $200,000 and I had unreimbursed hurricane costs to rebuild my home of $40,000, then I would only pay tax on 160 this year. It's not a credit, but it's a deduction. And it's not an itemized deduction either, I assume. It comes right off of adjusted gross income.
I think it's a itemized deduction unless it's attributed to a federally declared disaster for personal.
Okay, so for purposes of this audience, it's not itemized. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so the rule is that if the property is damaged, the deduction, you get the lesser of the fair market value of the property immediately before the casualty, minus the fair market value of the property immediately after the casualty, or, and it's the lesser of that, or the adjusted basis. If the property is completely destroyed, then the deduction on the maximum potential deduction is the adjusted basis of the property. So, like I said, a couple examples I think are helpful, and these come from an IRS publication. So you see here, there's a couple examples. So the first thing, I'm looking at the first column there, we have a chair that costs $350. They received a reimbursement from insurance of $200. The fair market value, I'm looking at column 5, was $275. The fair market value after the casualty was nothing, so it was completely destroyed. And so 5 minus 6 is 275. So we're looking at the smaller of the difference between the fair market value immediately before and immediately after, which is 275, or their adjusted basis, which was 350. The lesser of those two things is 275, but they got $200 in insurance, so their casualty loss is 75. And there's another example of a clock. It's pretty much the same example. So we can go to the next slide here.
This applies only to chairs and clocks?
Good news is it applies to more than just chairs and clocks. We'll get into, actually, the next example is have some other items. So here's another example. So somebody purchases an automobile for $3,600. It's damaged in a collision. The fair market value of the automobile was $2,000 before the collision and $1,500 immediately after, and you received $300 in insurance proceeds to cover the loss. Go to the next slide. So we have the value immediately before was 2,000, after was 1,500, the difference is 500. The loss he gets to take is the lesser of that difference, or his adjusted basis. So we're going to take the 500. He received $300 in insurance, and so he's allowed a deduction of 200. Now, we should note here this was personal, and it wasn't. If it wasn't for a federally declared disaster, that wouldn't he wouldn't be able to recognize that. But this just as an example.
So this is interesting because this regulation was issued in the same year that I was born, 1959. And back then you could take this loss without a federal disaster. And back then you could buy a car for $3,600.
The times they are changing.
Times are changing, but H&R Block in Florida is going to be very busy when people can't do their own tax returns because of the complexity of this particular item, but I'm sure TurboTax will handle it. So Peter, this applies to lost my fishing poles and had to buy new shoes because I lost all my shoes except the ones I was wearing, and also my building.
Yep, it would, but I mean, again, if it's personal, it's not now. But yeah, there are a couple other rules I should point out that we went past. For personal losses, it has to exceed $100, and it's also limited to 10% of your adjusted gross income. However, in the past, Congress has suspended that limit for certain disasters. That's on slide 161. I'm reading that from.
Okay, so as the law now stands, you only get the deduction to the extent that it exceeds 10% of adjusted gross income.
I think to the extent it exceeds $100, but it's it's limited to 10% of AGI.
Oh, wow. So if I make $1 million a year and my loss is $2 million, I only get a $100,000 deduction. Well, I hope that
for personal use property, that's important under that.
Right. If it's business property, I get the whole deduction as if I sold the property at a loss. If it's a federal disaster, right?
Yeah, but for business property, you still get the loss even if it wasn't a federally declared disaster.
Right, and you see in 1959 they didn't have airbags because there's no airbags exploding here.
That's a good point.
And they didn't have Morgan and Morgan, so there's nobody in a stretcher.
And there was a 12-year-old driving that car.
There's a 12-year-old driving the car. Right. All right. Where else do we go?
These are kind of the same sort of examples over and over again. One thing to point out, for a business use building where you have to split your basis between the land and the building, you have to calculate the loss separately between those two things. It's on the previous slide. This was for a house. We can move on. You can review these other examples, but the same principles apply.
Okay.
Well, those actually were our slides on 139. We've included here a number of FAQs for disaster victims from the IRS website. We linked to that website also, I believe, in the slide deck. These cover things we've already discussed in this webinar, as well as some other items, but this might be a good resource for anybody who has questions. And there is actually a lot of material helpful material on the IRS website on these issues.
Yeah, and the IRS, you can call 866-562-5227 and get free music on hold. And sometimes it lasts an hour to an hour and a half, and there's absolutely no charge to hear this music on hold. And it's really nice music. So the IRS is involved with helping people understand only the tax law or also SBA and FEMA rules?
That's a good question. I was looking in more for the tax rules, but I think also if you go to the FEMA website, there are separate websites that have particular resources on for FEMA and SBA.
Right. Now, also, this is the first year that I've ever seen in my 40 years of practice where my 2024 tax return is going to be due before my 2023 tax return. Our accountant is going to be very, very busy in April, May, and June of 2025, taking care of those clients who wait until the last minute and expect the CPA to do all those tax returns. It's going to be a worse nightmare than the PPP years, unless you can really train your clients and make sure your clients understand that if they don't get you the 2023 stuff by a reasonable date, you're just not going to help them with 2023. I want to mention before we go further that the FEMA website also has free legal advice. They have a legal hotline that we can call Monday to ask the questions to all these things that we talked about and get free music on hold. And then they also have free counseling. So if your problem resulted from the storm, then you get a free counselor. And for a lot of us, that'll be marriage counseling. I don't know how many divorces get caused by the stress, the financial stress, and then you had to spend time with your mate, with your spouse in a hotel room in Orlando after an 8-hour drive on I-4. So the divorce lawyers will be there in droves. Anything about NOLs, Peter? I'm trying to remember how NOLs work. If I have a large loss that exceeds my income for the year, can I carry it back to last year and get a refund?
I'll have to get back to you.
Tell me Monday.
I'll tell you on Saturday.
Perfect.
Saturday afternoon.
Okay. All right. So let me see if I have any. Let me go ahead and go through the slides. Okay. So wow, we finished early, which is a big accomplishment for me. It doesn't happen very often. Our conversation has answered all the questions. If you would like more discussion or more information on anything we talked about, please let me know. You are, of course, welcome. We're going to go ahead and put a table of contents on this PowerPoint deck and then send it out. You're very welcome to share any of this, as Steve Lineberg used to say, always say. We hope that this helps you to help others. Dana and Rachel, congratulations on your premiere appearances on this webinar. Peter, thanks for working this afternoon, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day.